Hi guys. In today's video, I'm painting Gorzag Gitstoma. He's featured originally on the front of one of the Gorka Morka rulebooks from 1997, and in 2020 was given his own model. I've always liked Orks, and the design of this one really captured me. Gorzag and his accomplice Knikkit have just robbed an Ork boss stash, and have gone on the run with all the loot. We've started with a Chaos Black spray primer, and for this video I'll only be painting Gorzag. All the steps taken will be applied to Knikkit as well. First up is a Caliban green base coat for all of the skin. Then I paint all of the leather parts in Morn Fang brown. This would be the jacket, hat cap, flaps, boots and the strap on his bracelet. Next, I paint the pistol, knife, shoulder pad, boot caps, bracelet and bullets, near enough all of the metal parts on the miniature, in lead belcher. One thing you'll notice in this video is I go back to finish and fix bits off camera. In this case, there were sections I painted lead belcher later in the video that could have been painted earlier. I paint his bottoms in Dark Reaper. We're going to turn these into jeans later on. Now I'm painting all of the little fur patches on his hat and boots in Mechanicus standard grey. Any dark grey would have been fine here. Then I paint the cords holding the skull onto his waist in Talon sand, along with his necklace. Now picking out all of the trim with Retributor armour, specifically the fist pendant on his dagger, the hilt and pommel of the dagger, the little teeth on his weapons and boots, along with the band on his shoulder, earring and belt buckles. I forgot one of his bracelets as well and come back later to it. Next I apply Talon sand to the teeth and single tooth pendant on his shoulder. Then I paint the wire bracelet and bullets in the gun's magazine in Screaming Bell. You can see I painted all of the teeth parts on his weapons and boots too, but I changed this to Retributor armour later. Next I shade the leather sections with Agrak's Earthshade. Now, to cover all of the silver metal with Nuln oil. Next, the three straps below the belt get painted in Mephiston red. Then I paint the ammo box that Gorzag is standing on in a mixture of Deathguard green and Abaddon black. We're now going to start building up layers of skin colour, starting with Warpstone Glow mixed with a little bit of water. Make sure to dab your brush onto some tissue before you go straight to the model. You can already see that the paint on the left half of Gorzag's belly is almost dried, and it's only slightly tinted the skin. I give this model about 3 to 4 coats by just consistently moving the paint around over these dried spots. By this point you should be able to see what I'm doing, simply building the colour up on all of the raised areas of skin. I usually do 3 to 4 different sections and then go back and cover over the places I've already been, but in a smaller area so that the transition of the colour isn't so bold. We're moving straight to the next skin highlight, ORK flesh, again mixed with water, and I'm going to repeat the exact same process of building up on all of these raised skin areas, leaving the recesses dark but with a little bit of warpstone glow showing through so that there's a gradual change. You can see here that I make a straight line at the point where I want the highlight to be. Then I pull paint from either side of that line into the centre where the paint pulls most. You're about to see again, with this large portion of the shoulder, I start from the lower section and bring the paint up to the highest point, and you can see the pigment leaving the brush with the watery mark where the brush leaves the model. I do this on both sides, and this helps the transition of light. This process is simply layering with glazes. I left a lot of this footage uncut because it's a step a lot of beginners could pick up with ease if shown correctly. It takes some practice, but on a model like an Ork, the process is made a lot easier. It's something I'm still working hard to get right, but it really helps build up those volumetric highlights. Now, I'm going to do the same on the face of the model. It's the exact same process, but just less room to do it. I've gotten some of the pooling into the recesses between the cheek and mouth. As the paint is so watered down, it's very easy to just suck that back up with the brush. The paint just pulls away with the water tension of the brush, something you can't do if you don't water down your paint. Now I've mixed phalanx yellow into my existing ORK flesh mixture. I pick out more highlight areas, mostly the edges, and due to the size of the area I'm working on, I have to do almost a stipple motion rather than an edge highlight. Then I'm back to the rest of the skin using that same mixture of Ork flesh and phalanx yellow, and I'm applying it to the centre of those highlights. I stipple around the highlighted area, then pull in from the outer edges with a glaze. At this point, the skin, apart from some very small finishing touches, is complete. I've taken the method shown on Gorzag's left arm and just applied it all over the rest of the skin. Now I'm going back over the belt cords with more Mephiston red just to build up the colour, as the first coat wasn't bright enough. Next, I pick out the skull attached to his hip with more Morghast bone, along with the skull symbol on the back of his jacket, leaving the jaw section in Leadbelcher. You'll see I go over it in a couple of coats. Once dried, I go back over the skull with Pro-Acryl Ivory. I also paint the skull on his pistol in the very same ivory colour. Then I pick out the eyes of Gorzag with Mephiston red. Sorry for the shaky cam here, I have to get so close to be able to see the eyes that I end up just knocking the camera every time. Then, to make them look extra bright, I plop a dot of phalanx yellow into the centres. You can see at this point I've gone back and repainted all of those bronze sections with gold. Another long section of painting here. I mixed scrag brown with water and started painting the highlights on the leather jacket and hat in a very similar way to how I did the skin, but with more stippling. Because this is the first highlight, I paint most of the viewable areas with scrag brown, leaving all the sections that would be in shadow alone. But painting leather in this way is more about making it look worn and battered than getting the light right. On the hat, I start at the midway point and start dragging the paint up towards the top to create the highlight. This is again using a glaze. And now that all of those leather sections have been painted, I need to pick out the leather on the bracelet and boots too. And with that, the leather sections have had their first layer finished, and it's ready for the next highlight. This time, scrag brown mixed with Morghast bone and water. I'm going to start this highlight with a stipple, just creating irregular patterns. Let me know in the comments if leaving this much footage in is helpful or just overkill. I've left it in this time because I thought people would find it more helpful than those that don't. The next highlight is Talon Sand and Morghast Bone, just focusing on the edges with that same stippling motion, and this will be over all the leather parts. I think I might even release both the skin painting phase and the leather painting phase as separate videos. Do you think that would be helpful? I think it's helpful for a lot of beginners, and your feedback on this would really be appreciated. Next up, I'm painting the belt in Mephiston Red and a Rhinox hide mixture. At this point I had repainted the pouches attached to the waist in Morghast Bone. This was so that I could change up the leather tones a bit with some contrast paint. Then I apply Agrak's Earthshade to the skull on his hip. And with Abaddon Black, I paint the plates on both sides of his pistol where the vents are. Then I use snakebite leather all over both pouches. Next is an edge highlight of Zamizi Desert on both pouches. Then I pick out the wrinkles on the larger pouch with the same colour. Now I start to paint the jeans. We're starting with rust grey mixed with water, and I use a stipple and edge highlight to block out most of the raised surfaces. Painting in these little lines can really help add texture to the material that you're trying to paint. Then, with a mix of rust grey and pro-acryl ivory, I paint in smaller areas of the sections that I've just highlighted. With the jeans complete, let me know what you think. Now I need to do a highlight of the teeth. Taking Morghast bone again, I just paint the upper 60% of the tooth up to the tips. Then I do the same for the tooth pendant, just highlighting the top of the tooth and where the ring hooks into it. This is where the light would catch, and then finishing off the skull on his waist, again picking out the sections where the light will catch. Back to the belt. I just run an edge highlight on the upper and lower parts where I can with Mephiston Red. Then, with Wild Rider Red, I highlight the edges of the 3 belt cords on the front of the model below the buckle. Then, I paint all of the little bolts on his belt cords in lead belcher. Then, it's time to finish off the fluffy parts of his hat and his Ugg boots. Taking Administratum Grey, I dot each of the bobbles. Next, I do the same thing again, but I use a smaller dot and I use Pro-Acryl Ivory. Now, I apply Reikland Flesh Shade to the belt cords and all of the gold sections on the model. I've now put Gorzag back on his base, ready for some weathering. The base has simply been made up of a few spare Space Marine parts, and I've used Martian Iron Crust technical paint as that comes in red, which really complements the green skin of the Ork. Before I start weathering the base and the lower parts of the model, I highlight the metal sections with Ironbreaker. Here I'm using Vallejo Pigment's brown iron oxide on the base. This is a weathering powder which when applied dry gives an excellent dusty look to any model's base. Just load up your brush and work the powder into the base and lower sections of your model and it will give it a great weathered look. Be warned, you will make a mess with this stuff. After I'd finished with the pigment powder, I needed to clean up that base rim. So using a cotton bud dipped in water, I simply wipe around the outside of the base to clean off the pigment, and then I use the dry side to go back around and soak up all that water. Then, with a slightly moist brush, I wipe the tips of Gorzag's boots so that they don't look quite so dusty. Now it's time to seal in all that pigment with a coat of matte varnish. I'm using a spray can of Army Painter Anti-Shine, and I do this outside off camera. Once finished, all of that powder should be sealed in and our model's got a lot more protection from any chipping or greasy fingers. Next up, I paint the flat sections of Gorzag's knife in Abaddon Black. Then, with Mephiston Red, I start painting lines along the knife ready for a checkered pattern. This can be as big or as small as you like. I found using red and black easier, as both of these are potent colours and easy to correct mistakes. With our lines made, it's just a case of blocking out each square and then correcting the square sizes. Once complete, I do this on both sides of the knife. I also did this on the black panel on the pistol. Then I wanted to give the knife what looks like a sharp edge, so I painted lead belcher over all the edges again, as the matte varnish would have dulled this slightly. I do this in painted lines for a jagged look. Once I've done that, I go back over with a silver colour, in this case Runefang Steel, and I paint in the lines again over the top, but covering only the last half of the blade section. Then, back in with lead belcher, I edge highlight the gold sections of the model, starting with the knife. Then, I do the same for the silver sections of the model, but with Runefang Steel. Metallics finished, it's time to pick out those last details, starting with finishing off the pouches. I painted one of the pouches in Sigvold Burgundy. Then with Garagak Sewer, I painted the flap of both pouches. Now we're going to colour in the lips to break up some of that green skin, starting with Phoenician purple on the lower lip. Then, while the paint is still wet, I dip my brush into some Bugman's Glow and paint straight over the top to wet blend the colours together. And with a pre-mixed Bugman's Glow and Fulgrim Pink, I paint even less of the lip for another highlight. I then repeat the same process on the upper lip and outer parts of the mouth. All of these paints have been watered down with a 50-50 mix. I do the same for some other areas I wanted to look extra fleshy, but using only Bugman's Glow and Fulgrim Pink. I pull the paint into the area I want, in this case the elbow. Then when I've applied enough paint, I wash off my brush and I wipe away from that central area to help blend these transitions together. I then do the exact same for Gorzag's knuckles and the vein on his right arm. And with that, the model is finished. I painted both Gorzag and Knikkit in the same way, using the same methods. Two really fun characters to spend some time on. I thought this video would be a great addition to really showcase some painting techniques that you could use on your hero models. And hopefully I've captured some of that original Gorka Morka artwork in this model, while also painting it in my own unique way. As always, let me know what you liked and didn't like. This was a really long video, but for the amount of detail painted, I wasn't sure what to cut from this and what to keep. Potentially I could cut this down into 20 minutes, and then upload the full video separately for those specifically wanting to see the whole process. Anyway, take care and bye bye.